Alright, so we are back, of course, to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We are once again looking at the trailer, kind of another trailer breakdown, essentially, because there's quite a bit of details. I have like a pretty decent list right here on my phone of things that I either didn't catch, things that are pointed out to me, or things I forgot to discuss. There's some pretty important stuff that I forgot to discuss, actually, and just some general things that I think are interesting. Like, for example, one of the questions I had with the trailer breakdown video is, when we're running around the world with our party, we have like our team of 3 that fight, what's happening with the other party members? And it's in the trailer. Like, they're just in the fucking background during the fight. Like, we'll talk about it more when we get to that point of the trailer, but yeah, I just completely missed that. So as we did with the last video, we're just going to go kind of in order from beginning to end and just cover the things that I want to talk about. And if we need to cut away and talk like this, we will at certain times. Anyways, let's get into it. So right out the gate in the trailer, we're shown one of those like Jenova glitches, Jenova flashes, whatever, and we see the tornado from the end of Remake, right? The Whisper tornado, essentially. I put a little bit of emphasis on this in the trailer breakdown, but I didn't actually talk about it, but it's a different color. It's like this orangish, reddish shit in the middle of it, and it's definitely not how it was in Remake. Like, the end of Remake, that tornado that our group sees and gets sucked up by is just strictly purple. I don't know if there's any meaning to this. I don't know if it means anything at all. It's just interesting. It does seem to show, however, that what was happening to our group inside the Singularity seemed to also be happening to the actual world, because as we're having a tornado rip through this Singularity that we're in, it apparently was happening in actual Midgar as well. Now, the orangish color to that tornado might be because maybe it's like an allusion to like the tornadoes we see with like Meteor at the end of FF7 Original and that scene that we got with Sephiroth in Remake. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Now, what does this mean? Does it mean anything at all? I have no idea. I was always under the impression that the Singularity we walked into was like its own thing. It's like a pocket dimension. There's a gigantic purple whisper monster thing. But this seems to show that at least some things that were happening inside the Singularity might have also been happening outside of the Singularity in the real world again. So maybe that's like an allusion to the altered timeline stuff, showing like the ripple effect. Things that are happening in there are also happening out here. Maybe. I don't know. We also had to talk about this because I thought it was funny. In the third flash that we get, where we see the feather, like right before the end of the beginning sequence, people were looking at this scene and apparently seeing Zack. And if I don't point it out to you, you probably wouldn't even be able to see it anyways. But it's the bottom left corner, right? And I could see, like, at a first quick glance, that kind of looks like somebody with maybe the Buster Sword on their back. But there's clearly a fucking red light at the end of it, at the end of what would be the handle. So it's a crane. It's just a fucking crane in the background. And stuff like this, where people lose me with like the theory crafting stuff, because this is just the Yuffie eyeball Vincent scenario all over again. And for those of you that maybe don't know what I'm talking about, back whenever we got a trailer for episode intermission, at the end of the trailer, Yuffie's like overlooking the destruction of Sector 7, like she does at the end of the DLC. And people are like, if you look in the reflection of Yuffie's eyeball, she's staring down Vincent. And it's like, no, dude. And this is the same thing here. It's like, there's Zack right there in that flash. Why is Zack there on the highway? What's going on? It's like, no. Does Zack have a fucking red, bright orb at the end of his Buster Sword handle? No. Like, come on, dude. So something I want to touch on with this beginning sequence is, we talked about in the trailer breakdown the possibility of this whole like area being potentially like a Midil and or Benora, because that's where we've seen windmills in the past with FF7. I was pretty confident that's not the case. Like, this is us leaving like Mithril Mine, and this is like somewhere between like Mithril Mine and Junon or something like that. What I failed to notice, though, with my trailer breakdown is there's actually a town or something downhill from those windmills. So in front of Cloud's character model right here is where the windmills are at. You can also see the lighthouse in the distance, but right in front of like Red 13's character model is a town. It's like hard to see in the trailer because it's really brief. Like, the bitrate on these trailers are fucking assholes, so it's like hard to make shit out sometimes. But yeah, there's clearly like a structure of buildings there, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's Benora and or Midil. But that's something I didn't notice. That's definitely a location, a town where there's probably going to be people or something, I would say. I did see somebody mention that might be Chocobo Farm, but the thing is, we're walking out of a cave, potentially Mithril Mine, and obviously Chocobo Farm's an open plains area based on original FF7, so we don't walk out of anything to get to it, we just leave calm and walk to it. But also, we see Chocobo Farm in the trailer, and it's like surrounded by a bunch of trees and shit, and this isn't really. The reason why I bring this up, though, is that it is possible we visit Midil or Benora kind of early in the story than we normally should. Because Midil's not far from the beginning segments of FF7, right? It's on a set of islands that are like south of the Eastern Continent. Eastern Continent's the one that has like Midgar and Junon and stuff on it. And canonically, Benora is in the Midil area. Benora from Crisis Core, obviously. And so it's only like a boat ride away, right? And we're told we're going to visit locations out of order. I'm not saying that that's what that location is right there. It's just a possibility. So with this trailer, we talked about not seeing Fort Condor. People were saying that these birds right here are condors, or I guess meant to be condors. I'm not a bird person. I don't know shit about birds. They kind of look like some condors if you Google what a condor looks like. But obviously, when we're talking about Fort Condor, we're looking for a gigantic, massive fucking bird on top of a tower, right? And we just don't see that anywhere in the trailer. But if these are meant to be condors, then obviously that is some sort of an allusion to that location. I do want to add as well that because of pausing this scene, I noticed that in the background to the right It was what appears to be ruins, and that might be the ruins that we see our characters riding chocobos through later on in the trailer. So one thing that I forgot to talk about with the trailer breakdown video that absolutely pisses me off that I forgot is our character stats. If you look in the bottom right corner, you can see that our stats are quite low compared to what they would actually be at the end of a playthrough. So right here's a picture I took on my phone of my character's stats after my very first playthrough of Remake, right? I saw that save file on the PS4. This is like post Chapter 18 when you unlock Chapter Select. You can see that like Barrett's stats here, like he's got 6,000 HP, and that's without any HP up material. Neither one of these characters have the HP up material equipped right now. And if we just do like a quick side-by-side here, you can see that Barrett's health is significantly lower than it would be after a general playthrough of Remake, right? His max health would be like 1,1600 maybe or some shit like that. Now, why would all this matter? Well, for some people, this might be a bit of confirmation of there being a reset, right, between games. Like, people are worried that we're not going to get our shit back, or have our levels, our gear, our materia, and, like, the low stats is, like, proof of that, right? Why are stats so low compared to what they would be at the end of a Remake playthrough? But what people aren't realizing, or what they're forgetting, I guess, is something we talked about on this channel, is there's going to be a starting point, right? Rebirth is standalone. You can go and buy Rebirth, fire it up on your PS5, and play it right away, having never played Remake at all. So, like, low stats aren't necessarily indicative of a reset, right? Because let's assume for a second that there is data transfer. If you chose not to do that and you just did a fresh playthrough of Rebirth, right? There's going to be a starting point for your characters. They're going to start at a particular level. They're going to have a certain amount of gear, maybe a certain amount of material, a certain amount of items, whatever the fuck, right? Like, there's a starting point, like any other game that you fire up for the first time, right? So low stats don't really mean anything, and it's also just a trailer where they're just like showing off like gameplay and shit, so the stats might not really be reflective of what they would be at that point in the game anyways. So big question about Rebirth watching this trailer was what happens to our full party during combat, right? Like if we're controlling a specific 3 members for combat, what are the other party members doing? And actually during the Red 13 like solo segment where we see him do like vengeance mode, you can see Aerith kind of in the background just walking around, not really doing anything, but if you pay attention in the bottom right corner, she's not a part of the active party, right? It's Red 13, Cloud, and Barrett. And if we hop over to the Japanese trailer during the Tifa and Aerith combo attack, you can see in the background that Barrett's also standing there and he's not a part of the active party, but you do actually see him fire his gun. So what this tells us is that our full party is present during combat situations. What we don't know, however, right now is whether or not they're actually participating or if it's like a visual thing, if that makes any sense. Like we see Barrett in the background firing his gun, but we don't see him doing any damage necessarily, right? We don't know if he's doing damage. It might just be like a visual thing, and I'd almost be fine with that, to be honest. If you have like your non-active party members that are just kind of running around the battlefield just acting like they're fighting, even if they aren't, like that at least makes it feel realistic. Now, obviously, if they were actually contributing and doing damage, that would be pretty useful. But yeah, that at least answers my question, because we see our group run together, like at least 4 of our characters run around the world together, and I wondered like what happens if we stumble upon an enemy. And it looks like everybody's present. It's just a matter of whether or not your non-active party members are contributing to the fight. I was almost done making this video, and I want to come back and add this part to the conversation of like the additional party members in the background of combat. Maybe that's like a roundabout way of like showing us that we can maybe switch to them. Like that's something people are wanting, is the ability to switch to all the party members in the middle of fighting. Maybe you can. Maybe like you see Barrett in the background like fighting as like AI, but maybe you can swap to Barrett, make him an active party member. That would be kind of cool. And something else I've seen mentioned that I thought was interesting is that like if a party member dies, like maybe you can take one of those guys that is in the background doing nothing and make them an active party member because somebody's dead now. They can like fill that spot. Kind of like what 12 does. Whenever like a character dies in your party in 12, you can bring in one of the guys on the bench essentially. Some cool ideas. Hopefully we get that answered at some point. And hopefully those are a thing. So something definitely worth talking about is the physical size of the game. So during the Yuffie and Red 13 team-up attack, if you look at the compass at the top, you can see there's a destination that is 11,000 meters away. Now that is pretty damn big, right? 11,000 meters is about 11 kilometers. It's about 6.8 miles. The thing is that we don't have context for the scene. So what we don't know yet about the game is if there's any level of backtracking, right? You couldn't really do that in Remake. Like if you try to walk a certain direction, like a character would be like, dude, come here, come back. And obviously this is more open zones with exploration, so we probably do have some freedom, but can we backtrack? So once we go through Mithril Mine and we get out to the area where we're going to walk towards Junon, can we turn around and just walk back through Mithril Mine and go back to Calm? Is that a possibility? Because if so, we don't know what this is right here, because that's a very, very far distance, but is that the size of these zones, or is that like a marker that's at Junon and we're fighting over here by Calm? Is that why it's 11,000 meters away? Or are these zones roughly about 6 to 7 miles big? Who knows, man? But if these zones are that big, right? If like the Calm to Mithril Mine zone is like 7 miles big, and then we go through the Mithril Mine and go out the other side, and that's also like 7 miles big, like holy fucking shit. That is fucking perfect, dude. That's big. Your characters are going to have to walk or ride chocobos like 7 miles. God damn, dude, that's perfect. Something else to take note of during this outside of Junon segment is that the time of day is different. For most of the trailer, like it's just kind of midday or whatever, and either the sun is setting or sun is rising outside of Junon. But what we don't know is if there is a night or day cycle. We're kind of hopeful for when it came to Remake, because when we got the first handful of trailers, we could see that there was events taking place at different times of day, right? There's nighttime shit and daytime shit. That obviously ended up not happening, but this is a kind of different game, right? It's a bigger game, explorable. You can run around the world kind of looking through ruins and all kinds of other POIs and stuff. And I don't know if they're going to do like a realistic time of day thing where like as you're out exploring, it'll just kind of gradually get later in the day. Obviously, this would be like a cool thing because it's immersive, right? Having the time of day change as you do shit. But it's fine with what they did with Remake, where like depending on what chapter you're in is what the time of day is, right? So like the beginning chapters of Remake is nighttime, right? So when you get to like Sector 7 in Chapter 3, like if you just stood there and didn't move your character for like 5 hours, it would still be nighttime, right? It would never change. And that's fine if they want to do that, right? If like the time of day is based on the chapter you're in Rebirth, who cares? It's fine. Next we have Cowgirl Tifa's updated design, which isn't necessarily new because we've seen this updated design in Crisis Core Reunion. And it's for the better. Like, essentially, they just covered up her cleavage, which you get the flashback in Remake from, like, Cloud's perspective, and you can see Cowgirl Tifa, and you can see her boobs, but, like, at this time frame for when this takes place, she's a teenager, dude. She's, like, 14 or 15, and I just don't care to see that shit, so, like, I'm glad they changed that going forward, kind of like how they updated Yuffie's design and buttoned up her damn shorts, because why the hell was she designed like that? If we hop back a bit in the trailer where we see Sephiroth on what is believed to be the cargo ship, of course, it's pointed out to me in the comment section of one of my previous videos that Sephiroth is holding something. So if you pause it during certain moments, you can see that there's definitely an object in Sephiroth's hands, or I guess maybe technically Sephinova. But yeah, what we think this is right now is just a piece of Jenova. Like in the original FF7 on the cargo ship, like Sephiroth goes to fly away and like drops like a piece of Jenova. I think it's like Jenova's arm or some shit, and then you fight like one of the Jenova forms. And you see with this particular screen grab that it's a decent size, so maybe that's what this is again, like Jenova's arm or whatever, and he'll throw it down and we gotta fight it, or be left over after we kill the Jenova fight that we see in the trailer. Who knows? That is pretty much the video, my dudes. I think between these two videos, we've kind of touched on, I think, just about everything from this trailer. There is still some shit I'm aware of that we haven't talked about. Like, there's more, like, compass icons. During, like, the Chocobo Farm segment, there's, like, a couple different icons that look new that we didn't talk about in the previous video. But it's like, we can only talk so much about fucking icons. Like, whatever. We'll know what they are eventually, I'm sure. And then, like, something we for sure haven't talked about yet is, like, the monsters in the trailer, like, that our team is fighting. But it's like, they're updated versions of, like, the, original FF7 monsters. It's cool to see, but it's like, we don't need to really break that down. Even if there's anything else from the trailer that I've missed at this point, I don't think we're going to do, like, a third video. I doubt that there's that much to talk about now at this point, because we've spent about 30-plus minutes at this point breaking down this trailer between these two videos. So I think we've kind of covered just about everything. That is the end of the video, my dudes. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DaveYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more. And nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.